الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Amma ba'd, we are continuing our readings and our contemplations upon and within the work that is entitled Qasasul Anbiya, that is entitled The Stories of the Prophets, as has been authored by Abu Fida, Ismail ibn Kathir. May Allah the Exalted bestow expansive mercy upon his soul as he passes in the year 774 Al-Hijri. As today marks the 9th of the month of Rabi' al-Awwal of the year 1443 Al-Hijri, coinciding with what today is also the 15th of the month of October of the year 2021 Al-Damani. And we now enter into the 12th chapter of this work, and it is the story of Dhul Kifl. The story of Dhul Kifl. Allah said in the chapter Al-Anbiya, after the story of Ayub and Ismail, Idris, and Dhul Kifl, all of them were among the patient ones, and we admitted them to our mercy. Allah, verily they were among the righteous. And in the chapter Sa'd, after the story of Ayub, and mention our servants Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub. They all were owners of strength and of righteous understanding. Verily, we did choose them by granting them a good thing, the remembrance of the home in the hereafter. And they are with us, Allah, verily of the chosen and the best. And remember Ismail, Elyasa, and Dhul Kifl, all are among the best. The fact that he is praised in the verses mentioned above, and that his name came alongside the names of other great prophets, shows that he too was a prophet. May the blessings and peace of Allah be upon him. This is the popular opinion among scholarship. Some others, however, claim that he was not a prophet. He was rather only a pious, just, and wise man. And only here meaning that he's not a prophet, only not subtracting from the value of being pious, just, and wise. Ibn Jarir, and this is Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, he passes in the year 310 Al-Hijri. Ibn Jarir did not give his opinion on the issue. So he practices tawakkuf, pausation. I'm not going to say one way or the other. And Allah knows best. Ibn Jarir and Abu Nujayh reported from Mujahid that he was not a prophet. He was rather a pious man. Volunteered to be the people's guide and judge between them with justice. This was the reason that he was called by the name Dhul Kifl. Ibn Jarir and Ibn Abi Hatim reported from Mujahid that when Elyasa became old, he said, I wish I could appoint a person who could look after the people in my life so that I can observe how he fulfills his duty. So he gathered his people and said, whoever fulfills 3 conditions from me, I will appoint him my successor. The 3 conditions are that he should fast during the day, pray in the night, and should not get angry. Pray in the night, meaning involuntary prayer, not obligatory prayer. So a man stood up and said, I will do that. He said, do you fast during the day, pray in the night, and do not get angry? He replied, yes, I do. He turned him back that day, and then on the following day, he repeated the same. Everyone became quiet except the same man who again said, I will do it. At that, Elyasa appointed him as his successor. Iblis thereafter ordered his saying, go after that man, However, the devils, uh, they were unable to mislead him. So Iblis then said to them, his devils, his army, those who have disbelieved with him and are under his ward, leave him to me. He then came to him in the guise of a poor old man. This is Iblis himself. He came to him in the guise of a poor old man at the time of siesta, when he had gone for it. And the siesta, this is the qaylula, as it is called. And the qaylula, or the siesta, it is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And the way that he would practice this is that he would take a light nap before dhuhr, often 20 minutes or so, half hour or so before dhuhr, just to kind of refresh yourself for the day, right? And revitalize oneself for the remainder of the day. In the East today, though, typically in the Gulf states, it's commonplace that they do practice this, but they practice it after dhuhr, between dhuhr and asr. In the Gulf states, it's fairly typical for everything to kind of shut down during that time, and then they return back to work and activity after the asr prayer. But in any regard, and as it's being stated here, he used to not sleep in the day or at night, except that particular occasion. So Iblis knocked at his door, and the man said, "Who is at the door?" Iblis replied, "An oppressed old man." So he got up, and when he opened the door, Iblis started telling him a story, saying, "There is a problem between me and my people, for verily they have wronged me and did with me what they did." He intentionally prolonged this story so much that the time for siesta passed and afternoon approached. The man said, "When I do, I will take your rights." Then he went to his workplace and searched for that old man, but could not find him. On the next day, when he was judging between people in their matters, he waited for him, but he again could not see him. Then again, when it was time for siesta, he went home, and just when he was about to sleep, the same man turned up and knocked the door. He asked, "Who is it at the door?" The man replied, "The oppressed old man." He opened the door and said, "Did I not tell you that when I go to my court to judge, that you should come to me?" The old man said, "My people are the worst. When they came to know that you are sitting in the court to judge between us, they said to me, 'We will give you your rights.' But then when you left, they again started refusing to give me my rights." He said, "Go now, and when I am in my court, come to me." So he was again unable to have his siesta. He then went to his court and waited for the old man, but he did not turn up yet again. He felt very drowsy, and so said to one of his household, Do not let anyone come to this door, so I can get some sleep, because I am feeling very sleepy." Then when that time of the day came, the old man came. The watchman at the door said to him, "Go back, go back." The old man said, "I came to him yesterday and informed him of my story." The man at the door replied, "By Allah, we have been ordered to not let anyone come close." Then when he felt that he could not get past the watchman, he looked up and found that there was an opening from which he could get inside the house. Thus, he did that and then knocked the door from inside, waking the man up. He said to the watchman, "Did I not tell you to not let anyone in?" The watchman replied, "He did not enter the house from where I was watching." So asked him how he got in. He then recognized the old man, who was inside by that time. He asked him, "Are you an enemy of Allah?" He replied, "Yes, and you outwitted me in everything. So I did this to make you angry." Thus Allah named him Dhul Kifl, because he took responsibility of something and then fulfilled it. Ibn Abi Hatim reported that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari said while standing on the mimbar, on the pulpit, Dhul Kifl was not a prophet. Rather, he was a pious man who prayed 100 prayers every day. Imagine that, 100 units of prayers every day, right? After that, he took it up as his duty to pray 100 prayers daily, and thus he was named Dhul Kifl. And to put this in context, to pray 100 units in a day. How many units of prayer are we praying as an obligation? 17 units in a day. Excellent. How many units of prayer was the Prophet ﷺ praying regularly? Oh, Luis is 48. Rest of us say average day. We're going to get up to this neighborhood. We're going to get up to about 50. The understanding with that is when the Salah was initially obligated upon the Ummah, it was already an obligation upon the Prophet ﷺ preceding that. But when it was an obligation upon the Muslims, Allah caused him to ascend up throughout the seven heavens above paradise close to himself, and then obligated the prayer as how many prayers in a day? 50. It then eventually gets reduced to 5 on the advice of Musa alayhi salam, as we're familiar, right? He tells them to go back. Your people can't handle it. I've been doing this longer than you. I did it before you. I know the people. They can go back, ask for a reduction. Back and forth. It eventually comes down to 5, but the reward is 50. Yet the Prophet ﷺ himself maintained that original number of 50 in his voluntary prayers throughout the day in his units of prayer. Does that make sense? So then, if we add up the typical day of the Prophet ﷺ in his voluntary prayers, we're going to get to a number that is about 50. Okay? He's praying throughout his day and his night. To put this in context, on average, how long was the Prophet ﷺ praying in night prayer? Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud. Almost all night, Sheikh Rasul says. Because he will stand till his ankles will swell for sure. Okay, good. The rest of us say, how long on average would you say the Prophet ﷺ was standing and praying Tahajjud? Qiyamul Layl, voluntary prayer. After Isha, before Fajr, when the rest of the world is sleeping, he's praying how long? 1/3 of the night. Sheikh Hamza said? No? Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala examines the text to seek to come up with a number. He comes up with an average of 5 to 6 hours a night. Voluntary prayer, right? Okay. Now, to bring this into context, all of this is 50 units. Dhul Kifl is praying 100. He's doing double that on an average day. You follow? And yes, the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he would pray and sometimes he would rest, but on average, 5 to 6 hours a night. Dhul Kifl is doing double the amount. You follow? 100 units in a day.
Is he praying like the way Muhammad praying as far as the prostration, sajda, he's doing all those rakats?
Yes. So yes. So the structure of prayer, the mechanics of prayer, is the same throughout prophethood. What we call salah, we pray, right? We stand, we bow, we prostrate. Possibly some of the internal workings of the prayer may have differed in previous legislations. However, the fact that you stand in prayer and you bow and you prostrate, that's a constant, right, throughout all the prophethood. Go ahead.
Because it's recorded that Isa alayhi salam did the same prostration and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. And this is something that the Christian faith has documented in their New Testament, right? Okay. Which actually is interesting, right? But not to get off the beaten path, but looking to the book of Matthew, I believe the chapter number 26, before he is to be crucified in their narrative, before he is to be crucified, the night before in the book of Matthew, it explicitly expresses him as bowing down in prostration in prayer, looking for mercy from Allah. Yet they say he is Allah, so who is he praying to? Right? Or when they say that he was on the cross being crucified, right? Eli, Eli, lima sabaqtani. Oh my God, why have you forsaken me? Who's he praying to? You follow? In any regard, and back to the point here, the name Dhul Kifl, Dhu is a noun, and it means sahib. It means an owner or possessor of something, right? And kifl, it means responsibility. So Dhul Kifl is the possessor or the carrier of responsibility. And the responsibility that he carried was his trust that he had with Allah and upholding that trust in his servitude and his worship of him without wavering, even when he is tested. Now, scholarship differs with regards to who exactly Dhul Kifl is a reference to. There are those among scholarship that would say that this is the prophet Isaiah, and Allah knows best exactly who Dhul Kifl was, because this name Dhul Kifl, it's not a name. Um, it's what one might call it's a moniker, right? It's a moniker, right? It's a title that's given to someone, right? And we have those things, right? Like what's someone that you know that you call them by other than their name? Like what? Sheikh, Imam, Aqil, Baltimore Reds. Huh? Maybe. Go ahead.
Just like the same way how, the Prophet
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam,
they call him the trustworthy one.
they call him the trustworthy one. Good, good. Or you might call someone by some type of a nickname, like Robert. You might call him Bob, right? There may be the Prophet ﷺ called Aisha Aish, right? We in the city. Every city, huh? We call people uncles and aunts, correct? Right? Ammu, right?
You don't even call your mother.
Khala, huh?
Mother and father, you don't call them.
You don't call your mother and father by their name. You say mother and father, mom and dad, right? Mommy and daddy, right? And when we're growing up, you wouldn't dare call your parents by their first name, right? Okay, good. So we're in the city and such, right? Every city has a Pookie. Every city has a Black, right? Every city has a, give me something else. Whatever we call, right? Huh?
Shorty.
You said what?
Shorty.
Shorty, right? Okay. So this was a praiseworthy title that he had at the time that people would, right, call him by, but his actual name, right, Allah knows best, right? Allah knows best. Okay. We now come to chapter 13. Chapter 13 discusses the stories of the destroyed nations. And this isn't necessarily a long chapter, however, longer than we can complete within a 5-minute span. But we'll just do a very brief overview of what we are to cover, inshallah. We see here the people of Aras. We then see the people of Yasin. And we will discuss how the people of Ras and the people of Yasin were destroyed in their nations in our next sitting, inshallah ta'ala, and then perhaps enter into the 14th chapter, which is the story of the prophet Yunus, alayhi salam, or Yunus is Jonah. Am I saying it right? Yunus is Jonah, correct?
Yeah.
That's the English, right?
Yeah.
Point of benefit, though, Arabic point. So all names of all prophets are non-Arabic names. All the prophets we have, all their names are non-Arabic names. Except for 4. There are 4 prophets who had Arabic names. Those 4 are Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for sure. Huh? So we got one. Not Ismail.
Abraham.
Not Ibrahim. Because they're Babylonian. Ismail is Babylonian and African mixed.
Shuaib.
Good, Shuaib. Saleh, Hud. Hud. Yes, these are the 4. Now, any other prophet outside of these 4 that we have their names recorded will be non-Arabic names. Okay? Yunus is such a name. So because of this, Yunus can be pronounced properly as Yunus, Yunis, or Yunus. That noon there, you can place a fatha, kasra, dhamma, or a sukoon on it. It's all correct in the Arabic language. Yusuf is similar. You can say Yusuf, Yusef, Yusuf, or Yusuf. all correct in the Arabic language. But we will hopefully enter into the story of Yunus alayhi salam next week. And yes, it is Jonah. In fact, هذا والله أعلم صلى الله على محمد. If there's a question or two, we have about 120 seconds until the call. Yes.
What people did
Dhul Kifl. He appears to be from the children of Israel. He appears to be, but we don't know definitive. Allah knows best.
You know the time?
I don't have a time frame for you. Now, if Dhul Kifl, and a part of this problem is we have his title but not his name, right? If Dhul Kifl is Isaiah, then it's from the children of Israel for sure. But we don't know who is for sure, right? Similar to Dhul Qarnayn, right? Dhul Qarnayn is not his name; it's a title, right? The Dhul means possessor, the possessor of the two horns, right? Signifying the type of helmet, right, that he was wearing, that had two horns on it, right? But his name, we don't know exactly. So because we don't know his name exactly, we don't know exactly who he is. We just have his description, and we only have that description really in sort of Kaf, for example, right? Dhul Kifl is this type of a thing. Another question?
Are you going to talk about the other guy,
Dhul Qarnayn? No.
Oh, you're not going to talk about him?
No. He wasn't one of the prophets.
Oh, he wasn't a prophet?
No.
What was he then?
So he was a righteous king. He is also, what is the word for it? A righteous king and a righteous explorer, but not a prophet.
And also, they saying this Lord or keeper is Ezekiel.
This is an opinion. Right? And this is actually done by, we can't say it definitively, but by looking at the description of these other prophets and saying, well, it looks like it kind of lines up, I think it's him. That's the kind of thing we're doing here. But exactly who he is for sure, Allah knows best. Muhammadu.
One of the stronger opinion, because you hear some people say he wasn't a prophet, and then you got others saying he was. So which is the stronger?
With Dhul Kifl? When we say this, al-qawl rajih, right? What's the stronger view? What's the weightier view? What's the preponderant view? That's subjective. So there's no such thing that actually exists called the qawl rajih. They're called the qawl rajih, right? The qawl rajih means it's the weightier view, it's the preponderant view with that person. But the other person who takes a different view, the rajih with them is the view that they take. Does that make sense? So when we say the rajih, like, as though it's a conclusive view on the issue, no, that just means this person's conclusion on the issue is this. Does that make sense? Barakallahu feek.